Welcome to the 2019 CFL Combine presented by New Era. We are on the campus of University of Toronto at Varsity Stadium, and I am joined by Marshall Ferguson. We have got 3 separate shows for you guys today, jam-packed with all things Combine, everything you want and need to keep you guys updated on everything happening under the bubble here at the University of Toronto. Marshall, starting off, we've got O-line and D-line, and this is really unique to the CFL Combine because you get to see guys go up against each other in pads. Here's a little brief on what you guys are going to see today.
It is a full day.
It's a full day. It's a full day.
A lot going on, so I'm thankful that we got this all set up and everybody in-house. It's going to be a lot of fun to be able to see what these athletes are able to do. You mentioned the O-line, D-line. They've actually already run their 40-yard dashes.
Yep.
They've gone through the majority of their athletic testing at this point, and now we get an opportunity to actually see them in the pads, in the helmets, actually playing football, which is the thing that separates this Combine from any others. You get a look here at the offensive line that's involved. Drew Desjardins ran a pretty good time this morning. Jesse Gibbon, very good in the one-on-ones. Jonathan Hark, you see, from the University of Alberta, won the bench press yesterday. And there's a lot of talented players in this group. And then the defensive line as well. You have Nate Anderson out of Missouri. I'm interested to see him in the one-on-ones coming up here. I think Vincent Desjardins has helped himself a lot this weekend. So has Connor Griffiths yesterday with a big bench, 28 reps. And Robbie Smith from Wilfrid Laurier, he ran a 4.78 in the 40-yard dash this morning.
Welcome by cheers from the Scouts.
From Scouts, by his team, like the guys that are in the defensive line group. It was a really, really cool moment to see him kind of get celebrated by everybody here at the University of Toronto inside the Dome.
A guy we worked out with for the grind this year, working using sleds, incredibly powerful.
36-inch vertical yesterday. He benched 25 reps. He's putting together a really nice weekend right now, and the one-on-one should definitely help that.
Well, I am thankful to have Marshall Ferguson with me, as he is a breadth of knowledge when it comes to all things college-level football. I'm also thankful to have Davis Sanchez with us today, who is sideline. Davis, what's going on?
Brody, I'm thankful to have you and kind of Marsh as well. But you guys talked about Robbie Smith and his 40 time. Well, what we're looking for now is guys can translate that speed, the testing numbers onto the field. And this is where you see the coaches gathering around behind us now, doing footwork drills, bag drills. And this is where for knee bend, speed, explosion, all the numbers we saw in testing, how they translated onto the field. This is the day of the whole off season for all these guys. All the testing, all the training, it's all about today on the field. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Davis. We can see that group behind you starting to warm up, so we can tell that the action is going to get underway shortly.
Love these New Era jerseys too. Nice pop, the green in the background.
We need to talk a little bit about the graphics this weekend. I hope you guys have had a chance to see not only the jerseys, but also all the pageantry around the bubble today. It looks fantastic.
Looks great,
I love that neon green. It looks awesome. Now, we are, to give you guys a little bit of a sense of what one-on-ones are all about, we have a little 101 for you. Check it out.
One-on-ones are what make the CFL Combine unique. Players get in full pads for this drill as they go head-to-head to showcase their skills. Running backs showcase their ability to block in the backfield as well as how well they can get open as a receiver, while linebackers show their ability to drop back into coverage. Offensive linemen are judged on their footwork and pass blocking ability, while defensive linemen look to show their ability to shed blocks and get into the backfield. Receivers look to showcase their hands along with ability to get separation from their defenders. Scouts are looking for defensive backs that can read and react quickly and that compete for any ball thrown their way.
All right, we are now joined by the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, Coach Orlando Steinauer. It's so exciting to get to say that.
Well, I appreciate it.
Back in action with the head coaching role. Here at the Combine this weekend, you have a chance to scout Canadian talent. Obviously, you have Drew, who is your top scout, who does all the, I would say, the heavy lifting. But give us a sense of what you think of the talent so far this weekend.
Yeah, it's a general statement, but every year it just seems like the bar gets raised just a little bit more. Whether they are an inch taller, a little bit faster. You know, there's always those specific 40 times that there's a couple that flash. They get more impressive in the interviews. I like everything from the crazy comments to Some wardrobe malfunctions.
Come on.
Oh, but that's
Come
fun.
on.
No, but it's
Just like bad outfits or things actually you won't tell us?
It's all a matter of opinion. We won't
Okay.
go there.
Okay.
I was going to
Fair
say, maybe
enough.
it sends the wrong message as well. You come in with the wrong gear on.
It's about football, but it just seems like everybody's a little bit more prepared and they're ready to go. They're focused, and I just think that they've done a great job this weekend. And now we're on to some football. It's great to get out of the walls of coaching and out of the interview rooms and out here on the field.
I want to ask you, Coach O, about the idea of when the season is done, you kind of lose that rush of getting a big stop or a huge sack or throwing a touchdown, all those moments that really make you love the game. Maybe you get that in free agency when you find out, okay, we actually got this guy back that we want. But in evaluation, is there a moment that gives that to you? Because you mentioned when a 40-time kind of pops and everybody does the, ooh, when you look at the stopwatch, like I imagine that that's something that you would legitimately get excited about because you're like, ooh, when you start to think, what could this guy be like on our team maybe?
You do, and it just shows, I think part of it is you put a little emphasis on that, but I think in this day and age, there's a lot of guys that are great testers. They really prepare for this, and that's a credit to them. They should prepare. It could be life-altering for them, but at the same time, the proof is what they put on tape.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. You're trying to find some of those intangibles, for example, just their competitiveness, their ability to learn, those type of things, how high they jump, how fast they run. Those types of things are easy to measure. Those measurables are easy. It's really trying to dig into their character, their passion for football. That's the challenge, but that's also the fun.
I was going to say, you are known as a guy who your players adore you. You're known as a player's coach. You're the first guy people want to talk about. Anyone who you've coached, they think you're a great dude. So I was wondering how much character means to you as a coach when you're talking to Drew. Obviously, the guy needs to be able to play, but how much do you need to know about a guy's character if you're bringing him on, especially if it's someone that's maybe going to start playing specials and needs to work his way up through a roster?
Yeah, well, I could give you a canned cookie cutter answer
Yeah.
and say, well, no, he's got to be high character or we won't take
Right.
him. Sometimes you got to give people a little bit of rope. You're talking
Depends.
about, you're talking about free agencies. They're different. Free agents are at different points in their career.
Yeah.
Their maturity may happen later. Same thing with these kids or young men. They're 22, 23. Sometimes you got to know that you got to look down and say it might be a year or two before you get really what you're looking for. So character is high. It's definitely high on our board. It's if not one, it's two.
But you see it almost as an opportunity to mold them. Then you're saying, like, you can see that down the line it's there, but you'll have an opportunity to mold him into the kind of man you'll need for your team.
And I actually think of somebody like a Kay Okafor from St. FX a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, where everybody through the interview process said, this guy is a gem of a human being. Like, he's unbelievable to be around. Right. He's been in the locker room now, and he's still that guy. And you knew you were getting that, I would imagine, going through that process, because that's who he's always been.
Well, the bottom line is we as coaches are not even around the players as much as the therapists, the equipment people, the players. They're around each other more than just the coaches, So when we're in those 4.5 hours, we run the meetings and we're on the field, but they're around everybody else a lot more. So character is extremely important in the culture that you're trying to build. I know that's the overused word in culture, but I think you have to know how to build that culture, and it comes full circle to what you were talking about, Brody, is that's just how much emphasis do you put on character, how much do you put on the measurables. I think it's got to be a nice combination of all of it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great and successful day scouting today with Drew. We appreciate it.
And season.
And
Yes.
season.
Try not to
Yes.
get tired of me, okay? I'll be around a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we want to check out some past performances from notable players. Take a look.
So we take a look back at the history of the CFL Combine one-on-one, sending a message. Suk Chung, as we all know, free agent pickup by the BC Lions this year, leaving Winnipeg. Put on an absolute performance a couple of years ago, being able to win those one-on-ones. I think that made the man who's joining us in just a second here, Kyle Walters, the general manager of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, pretty happy when he got an opportunity to be able to see him running that way. And then Sean McEwen is another notable one-on-one that we saw a couple of years ago as the 3rd overall pick, Toronto Argonauts, as he came in as a center and showed right away why he should be a member of the Canadian Football League. And a ratio-breaking type player, an opportunity to be able to step into the limelight very quickly for the Argonauts and make a difference.
Thanks, Marshall. All right, Kyle Walters joins us now. Thank you for being here with us, and stuff's starting to get underway behind us, so we won't keep you for too long. But I was just talking to Coach O. What do you think of the talent so far in this year's class?
I think it's a great draft.
You do?
I mean, first impression is really well. I mean, we've done all the film work and you put the list together. I think it's a good deep draft, and seeing the kids in person, I think, reconfirms that.
Yeah, the offensive line, defensive line going on behind us, of course, that's important because those are the guys you're going to rely on to be the base of your team. But I got to ask you about the receiver group because I think from what I've seen, there's 3-4 guys in that group that are really athletic. Last year at East-West Bowl practices, I know all your scouts were there. You had an opportunity to check that out. What do you think of that group? Because they feel like a bit of the difference makers in this year's draft.
Yeah, sure. I think all the groups, the two out here are deep, but I've said all along, up until the preview for the draft, that the O-line, D-line, and receivers, I think, are deep and good draft classes. I think you're going to see a group of receivers that are athletic and they can make plays, and they've got the pedigree from their university careers and the athleticism to match that, which is really exciting.
I feel like you guys have had a knack does not give you enough credit. You've had a real skill in recent years of picking real star Canadian talent. So when you come here, do you look for those guys, or are you looking for, is it based on position? Is it based on skill level? How do you approach it? Does it change year to year?
Yeah, I guess we were watching Sook on their back when we took over. We had to draft O-linemen. We needed bodies, so Matthias and Sook, and they worked out very well for us.
Yeah.
I mean, Sook at the time, he had to get thrown in there and play right away. He started his first year because we needed him to. Matthias got a little bit better as a year after a couple years of training and became an all-star. So, those two have blossomed, and we're now in a position where we've got some depth, and we're able to, as disappointing as it is to lose Sook, a Michael Couture we've drafted, a Cody Speller from MAC has come a long way, and Jeff Gray's back. So it's, to your point earlier about the lines where everybody's starting usually 3 Canadians, which is almost half of what your Canadian stars are. You just have to keep drafting the line, develop them, and if you lose somebody like a Suk Chung, and unfortunately to Matthias with his unexpected retirement this year, you have to be confident that you've drafted well enough in the past that you can replace them.
Well, if history is
is
any example, I think you guys will be just you'll be just
and we're sitting with 2 first round. We're pick up 4 and 5 this year
That's
as
right.
well.
Early
so
second as well, right? So
So we'll I'm sure we're going to find some more guys that can compete early and we can develop to help down the road.
Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll let you get back to work.
Perfect.
Marshall, let's take a look at your 3 to watch here.
Yeah.
Talk us through these guys and why you've highlighted them.
So the first one I put up on there, and this is before the weekend even began, but it is Robbie Smith from Wilfrid Laurier University, and I did that because he had massive production last year, 10.5 sacks. As a pass rusher, I think he's a bit more refined, maybe even the Kwaku Boateng, who we all know how much success he's had in the CFL. He's come out and done 4.78 40-yard dash. He's had 36-inch vertical. Like, he's shown out athletically more than I thought he would. And then Zach Williams, I put him on this board because I think he's just so incredibly well-rounded. He moves well. He looks athletic in everything he does, and he's going to look good in the one-on-ones behind us here. And the last one, and again, I put Jonathan Hark on this before the bench press actually happened, and I did it because I wanted to see what the University of Alberta Golden Bears football program was going to produce when it came to offensive linemen. We all know Mark Cordy was the top U Sports player selected offensive lineman to Ottawa. Nice, see Justin Sorensen going as well to the Calgary Stampeders. They're starting to build a bit of a culture there, I think, at the University of Alberta, and I think Jonathan Hark is probably the next guy in that lineage.
Well, let's take a look at some of these guys in action. Actually, we can check them out here. Marshall, walk us through what these guys are doing now, the purpose of this, just generally for fans watching at home.
Yeah, so these are just your typical one-on-ones as we get a look here at Tarek Lachance against Jalen Guthrie from Guelph. He's got no logo on the helmet there, but the all-white helmet is Jalen Guthrie, who was an Ontario Regional Combine invitee. And these are just pass rush one-on-ones. It's a bit strange because there's no running back coming over to help out the offensive line, and there's no receiver chipping on the edge or being able to help in protection, and there's no help from your guard like inside. It's just one-on-one, so it's not a usual setup necessarily for a play. As you see Jesse Gibbon from Waterloo burying Uku Outinen from Finland, as we do have the global players as well mixed in. An important note here on the one-on-ones, which adds a little bit of that global CFL 2.0 flavor to the proceedings in the one-on-ones.
So, Marsh, who else, who do we have coming up here?
Yeah, so right now, at the center, you see Jonathan Hark, who won the bench press yesterday. That's against Mark Hoare from Germany, as those guys were actually 1 and 2 in the bench press yesterday, and they looked like they were just trying to bench each other right there. So
right.
That's kind of what those interior offensive, defensive linemen are like. And it is interesting having the global guys mixed in on these one-on-ones, because you get to see how the technical skill, the mechanics of being an elite offensive lineman in U Sports matches up against somebody like even from Missouri here with Nate Anderson going up against one of our global offensive linemen. Actually, that's Kyle Saxelid, I believe, from UNLV. And it's a little NCAA love between Saxelid and Nate Anderson. I'll say this as well about these one-on-ones, Brody. You really notice coaching. That's something that always jumps out to me is...
In what sense?
Just the idea of when you see somebody from, like, let's say Samuel Thomason, who's an offensive lineman here from the Laval Rouge et Or, you see how technically sound he is and how well he moves and stays within his base and all of those things. There's Vincent Desjardins as well, another Laval Rouge et Or player who is a standout. I don't think Desjardins gets nearly enough credit because he plays alongside Matthew Betts, who we all know is probably a first or second round pick in this year's draft. But just the coaching of places like Laval, like Western, like you get a sense for them putting in the work every day and being so mechanically sound that they know exactly what they need to do to try and win each one-on-one.
So in this case, Marsh, are scouts looking for that type of movement? They're looking for the mechanics of it. They're looking for guys who are well coached, who move well. Are they looking for big bodies? How would they watch something like this?
Yeah, so the thing I think that people misinterpret so often in the one-on-ones is what it looks like.
Like who? Just simply who's beating out who, and it's more than that?
It's not a fist fight, right? Like, so that's, I think, where people kind of lose the context of this is a scout is not going to be impressed by a defensive lineman that puts his head down, holds his hands at his side, and runs through someone's chest. Like, yeah, you might say, wow, he's really physical.
Right.
That doesn't tell me you're good at football. That doesn't tell me that you're going to get to the quarterback. That just tells me that you're a big monster. I think what scouts want to see and what they're watching closely for here is somebody like Connor Griffiths, who we see there, number 94, in the black UBC Thunderbirds helmet. He's really technically sound on film. He's really quick, choppy steps, moves well between the tackles, is good in the run game. Can he show that in one-on-ones? And they already have a perception of him from watching him on film, I'm sure, just like I do. And now they get to see whether or not that actually matches up with what they believe is. That's a great job by Drew Desjardins from Windsor, working against Robbie Smith from Laurier, a little OUA matchup there. So this will be Nate Anderson from Missouri.
All right, Marshall, we are going to check in with Davis, who's on the sidelines with Dwayne Ford.
Yes, thanks, Brody. Dwayne Ford joining us. Thank you. Peeling Dwayne away as he watches intently. Dwayne, we know some of these drills, the fans watching look about winning and losing and who's going to win the drill or lose. Yeah. We know that some of these drills are suited for offense more than defense or vice versa. So what are scouts looking for? Behind us, got one-on-ones, D-line and O-line. What are they specifically looking for, not just the wins and losses, but what else?
Yeah, I mean, certainly getting beyond that. Well, I think there's certainly more to gain for an offensive lineman from winning in what is a drill that is to the defense's advantage, right? Defensive linemen don't have anything to read here. They're just going after the passer. So when you're an offensive lineman, this is an opportunity for you to make a statement when you do win some of those. But the big thing, honestly, is about technique. It's about when they do make mistakes, when they do lose those battles, whether you're the offensive guy or defensive guy, and the coach pulls you aside and says, hey, try this, try that. Recognizing that those guys are taking coaching, recognizing sometimes that there's sort of the self-correction happening too, figuring out what they did wrong the last time, and do they make the same mistake twice or do they learn from those mistakes?
Just for our viewers to understand, kind of further explain what you mean. Why is this an advantage for the offense in a one-on-one drill versus the defense?
Yeah, well, and this one I would say when it's offensive line,
Vice
line,
versa,
yeah,
vice versa.
pass rush, right? Because in this situation, the defensive player doesn't have to make a read. It's like right away, as soon as the ball is snapped, he knows it's a pass, so he doesn't have to play the run at all. As a defensive end, you don't have to worry about a quarterback rolling out. You're going to a bag that is standing in the pocket. So as a defensive guy, it simplifies the game for you a little bit. You're able to get off quicker. You're able to kind of pick where you're going quicker and those sorts of things. And as an offensive lineman, it can make it a little bit tougher that way.
Okay, what's the over-under right now with these competitive guys out here scrapping in pads? Over-under on fights in these one-on-one drills, 40?
You know what? I think the odds are pretty low. You tend to get maybe a little bit of pushing and shoving, and maybe some beacon happening out there. But for the most part, I think the guys recognize the scouts want to see you be aggressive, but they don't want to see you be a guy who's going to be taking penalties and stuff like that. So you want to show your toughness, you want to show your aggressiveness for sure, whether you're an offensive or defensive player. But you want to kind of show that it's that you're competitive. You don't want to show that you're a hothead.
Draft expert Dwayne Ford. I had to peel you away from there. Thanks for taking time, bud.
My pleasure, my friend.
Back to you guys.
Thank you, Davis. A good point there from Dwayne Ford. I always wonder, after going relentlessly over and over and over and over again in these one-on-ones, if guys get testy with each other. You don't want to see someone be a hothead, but they have to see that competitive spirit. Where's the line on that?
Well, it's interesting.
And will you point it out when it bubbles
Yes.
over? Because sometimes I feel like my judgment of that is not correct.
Oh, so I've been around enough football practices like you have too, probably,
Yeah,
to be able to know when two guys don't like each other.
Yes.
And so the thing I find interesting, especially in the combine setting, is it's so emotionally driven because no other combine puts people in full equipment and goes basically full contact in a pass rush drill situation such as this. So what I love about it is there will be, a defensive end against an offensive tackle, and they'll go against each other 3 or 4 times. And what the scouts will do, and just keep an eye on this because there is a call-out section at the end,
the best.
The scouts will intentionally pick the 2 people who have had fiery reps that don't like each other because they want to see how people respond and the way that they kind of answer the bell, if you want to call it that. So that's something that I've always enjoyed about this setup at the CFL Combine. It gets better every year because we get a chance to see more and more specific matchups. We get a
nice move there.
French connection spin move right there. A little inside out that time. But I do love the idea of having matchups consistently. That's a matchup that Daniel Amaro is not going to win very often against Vincent Desjardins. I think he's rising quickly up draft boards during this segment of the Combine.
The Laval Rouge team just continues to produce such strong talent.
Yeah, always.
Always.
Eric Starzala there getting danced by Michael Sinelli, who was an Ontario Regional Combine invitee to the national show. Nate Anderson's got a ton of pass rush moves off the edge. He has a huge variety. He doesn't look real happy right now.
I was going to say, why is the helmet coming up? Tell us why the helmet's coming up.
He's
Is he
frustrated, I think. Yeah,
yeah.
Samuel Thomason's got super long arms, that DN spot. But again, these are the little moments where in the combine, a guy takes off his helmet, he's not happy. Is he going to do that in training camp?
Right.
Right? Scouts are standing there. They're not just evaluating the rep, they're evaluating the reaction, the response, how you answer the bell the next time you go up. Do you have that same matchup? I guarantee when the call-out section comes, they will ask for Nate Anderson against Samuel Thomason from Laval just based off of that
They want to
reaction.
see it again.
Yep,
They need
because
to
they
see
want
it
to see,
again.
okay, is he going to get frustrated?
Yes.
Again? Is he going to answer it? Is he going to make a decision that he has to step up and try and take on this challenge? That's the fun part, I think, of this combine setting. That's Jalen Guthrie, who came out of the Ontario Regional. Didn't run the 40-yard earlier today. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get a number on him, but very stout in pass protection. It's looked good throughout the weekend as Kyle Saxelid goes against Uko Outen. I think the football operations department would call hands to the face right there, but we'll leave the flags in our pockets at the combine.
All right, so they're wrapping this up now, Marsh. Well, what happens next? What are they moving into?
Yeah, so they break this thing down, have a little conversation, tell each other great job. It's cool how the
Are they
group's
doing the
gonna come
call-outs at
together.
this point?
Yeah, I believe they went through some of the call-outs there at the back end. As the D-line breaks things down. Early morning for these guys too. O-line, D-line waking up,
Absolutely.
getting themselves ready.
Yeah, we've already noted they've run their 40, so
Yes.
no doubt they're starting to get exhausted, especially after yesterday. All right, let's throw to Davis on the sideline. So you got Davis.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with offensive line coach, new offensive line coach for the BC Lions, Brian Chu. As you watch this is your wheelhouse right here with these O&D linemen. Is there anyone that stood out so far for you? And as you evaluate these guys, do you look for guys similar to yourself, or you were a great player for a long time? How does that work? As you kind of lean to guys you look like yourself, maybe, or how do you evaluate guys?
You know what, for me, just seeing athletic offensive linemen, all these kids that we have this year are all miles ahead of what I ever was. So, I mean, the biggest thing for me right now is just seeing guys that are competing at a high level, and we'll go back and evaluate the film again after.
Who out here so far reminds you of yourself?
There's not many people as short as I was in this league, but I'd probably say the kid from Alberta, Jonathan Harkey. I mean, I love his fight. I like his grittiness. Strong kid and willing to battle.
32 reps on a bench. He's a short arm guy, similar to you.
Yep.
What do you need to see from a guy like that?
You know what? The biggest thing with him is just the fight, the ability to get in there and get dirty and not be intimidated by bigger guys.
Brian Chu always had the ability, that's for certain. Back to you guys. Thanks, Chewy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davis. All right, we've got this group standing around still. Marshall and I believe they are about to kind of be called out potentially for some more one-on-ones. They've kind of gone through the different various matchups. Scouts have had a chance to see kind of what these guys have got, and now they're going to get more specific, really.
So I got a couple of names I think on my wish list, Brody, that I'd like to
Yeah.
see in the call-out. So Robbie Smith against Jesse Gibbon from Waterloo. I'd love to see that. I want to see Nate Anderson perhaps going up against Kyle Saxelid once again, because I think that would be a fun one to watch. And then on the interior, Connor Griffiths. I'm trying to think who I'd like him to go against. You know what? Either Connor Griffiths or Vincent Desjardins from Laval. I'd love to see them go up against maybe Jonathan Hark, who won the bench press yesterday from the University of Alberta. These very specific matchups as we get deeper into the combine and understanding the skill sets of these players.
See a group here from the Ottawa Red Blacks. Marcel Desjardins.
He's got some work to do building out that roster. Free agency was tough for the Ottawa Red Blacks, but I know that they feel pretty good right now. Little 1A, 1B with Jonathan Jennings and Dominique Davis at the quarterback spot right now. They say Dominique is ahead. He is the 1A at this point. We'll see what happens once they get to training camp, but I'm sure they'd love to pick up a couple of offensive linemen as they've dedicated their offensive line to a lot of national spots. With Evan Johnson that came out from the University of Saskatchewan a couple of years ago was great. Also, of course, Mark Cordy of the University of Alberta. Desjardins will have his eye close on this offensive line group.
All right, we're going to try and listen in and see if we can get a sense of these matchups here.
And the intensity is about to ratchet up now that you get the call-outs.
We've got Thomas Grant.
Gibbon is so strong on the inside. Gibbon's not going to blow you away with his athleticism, but he just wins every single rep. He handled Matthew Betts last year at the East-West Bowl. I loved watching Jesse Gibbon on film. As we get Drew Desjardins, looks like going inside to center here, seeing if he can take a center rep against Connor Griffiths from UBC. The old hog tie.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
But that's what Connor Griffiths makes you do. He puts you in a bad situation because he's so athletic. So here's Robbie Smith, Laurier Golden Hawks going up against Kyle Saxelid, UNLV.
Robbie Smith, we talked earlier, had a very speedy 40 time, 4.7, which was welcomed by cheers from the crowd.
And him walking over to the camera and saying it's all thanks to Brody Lawson.
Well, we'll talk about that later. All of our tough training.
That's a great rep. I think that was Zach Williams Yep, from Manitoba. That was against Vincent Desjardins, I believe, as well, from Laval. That's not easy to do to Desjardins. He's so low to the ground and athletic.
I got Robbie Smith again.
They're going to work Robbie Smith over this period.
There we go.
There's the matchup that I wanted. Robbie Smith against Jesse Gibbon, and I wanted it partially because Kitchener-Waterloo, I think those guys haven't gone against each other about 50 times.
That's the kind of speed we saw. We were working out with him for the grind. That series is going to roll out closer to the start of the CFL season, but just a powerhouse.
Wow. Jalen Guthrie was excellent in the Ontario Regional, and he's doing it again here at the National Show. And that time against NCAA talent and Nate Anderson, who again pops the helmet off at the end of a rep that he didn't look too happy about.
University of Guelph product, Jalen Guthrie.
That's good for Eric Starzala. He was someone who struggled on a center rep earlier on. That time, maybe a little bit more at home playing right guard.
If you guys at home are starting to hear the crowd cheer, there is a group here of, looks like families, some teammates, friends who have kind of crowded around. So you'll get a sense of who people are cheering on as we get going here.
That was Zachary Wilkinson from Northern Colorado by way of Vancouver, BC. Maybe the Lions taking a look at a guy from British Columbia. Ooh, little push-pull from Desjardins. That is, if you talk to defensive line coaches about interior defensive line play, one of their favorite moves that they see a guy pull off is exactly what Desjardins just did right there. It's not just push and drive through. It's not swim moves. It's a push-pull. It's you rock the guy back on his heels, and then you pull him right down. Ooh, as Jesse Gibbon tried to quick set.
Oh boy.
Yeah, Anderson is frustrated
Oh
and
my
takes it on the
goodness.
bag. Jesse Gibbon tried to short set him, so just tried to jump him at the line of scrimmage, and when he did, Nate Anderson read it. Desjardins is going to be a first-round pick at this point, based on what he's done this weekend. 25 reps on the bench, ran pretty well today as well. Really good film. Was talking to Miles Gorell from the Montreal Alouettes earlier this week, and he said, I think he's actually better than Betts. Betts gets all the press, but I think Desjardins might be the better player long-term in the Canadian Football League.
I find it interesting every year to talk to scouts, especially about the depth every year. I was talking to G. Roy Simon yesterday during our broadcast and had a chance to ask him before about the depth at some of these positional groups. And he was saying that every year the O-line is deep. This year he feels that's no different. So I know most teams really are looking for good O-line, Canadian O-linemen that they can develop. And this particular drill becomes really critical in that. D-line, he said as well, was really deep, actually, he pointed out.
I love Jonathan Hark playing with the mouth guard, sitting in the top of the helmet.
Super useful
It's
when it's not in your mouth.
It's the most offensive line thing we've seen so far today. They're going to throw Nate Anderson inside here.
All right, Davis, we want to check in with you, see what you're seeing from closer up. What are you observing over there?
Yeah, Brody, more than what I'm seeing is what I'm hearing up here. And there's some competitive chirping going back and forth. Zach Wilkinson just had a rep on the offensive line where he stymied the tackle and told him, no, not here, not on me, with some explicits in there as well. But I think when you're down here listening to guys, you can hear the competitive nature. They're getting back and forth and getting after it. Scouts for sure want to see guys who are willing to call guys out, to say, heck no, not on me, this is my house. Things like that, that's competitors. And you can see these guys who are wanting to be up front, wanting to be the center of attention. And if you're an evaluator, you want guys like that, a guy who's confident. You call somebody out, you're going to get called out and you're going to have to do it again. So you're hearing a lot of that down here. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Davis.
Yeah, Davis, I actually want to ask you a follow-up on this. Is when you're watching somebody like Nate Anderson, who is frustrated and working his way through the one-on-ones, gets planted on his backside a couple of times. He's taken off his helmet. He's wandering around. He's trying to step over guys. Like, he's brought kind of that attitude to today. It feels like it's kind of infected the rest of this group in the defensive line because they're starting to feel like that.
Yeah, no, Marsha, exactly. I heard you say that earlier, and I completely agree with you. He's brought the attitude that's not a good attitude. I saw the same thing that you saw, taking off your helmet, walking back after losing the one-on-one or not getting through. That's not something evaluators want to see. If you can see it from your perch, and I can see it from here, for certain that GMs see the same thing we see.
Something we'll need to keep an eye on in this positional group, and really as the day goes on, this attitude, we talked about it earlier, you need to have that competitive nature. You need to be fiery, but you can't lose your cool.
To me, it's very similar to when people talk about receivers and go, oh, wow, that guy has an ego. I don't like that. It's like, you have to have an ego as a receiver. Because you have to want the football. As a defensive lineman, sometimes you're supposed to have bad intentions. You're supposed to have a bad attitude. You're supposed to play
How many times is an O-line group described as nasty? And that's like the best thing you could ever be called. How many times did we hear that about the Winnipeg O-line group this year? And that is partially what drove them so far into the playoffs this year.
And they did it against Stanley Bryant on the end and some other American pieces, but with national talent as well in the interior of that offensive line. So that absolutely plays into things, as we just saw Robbie Smith trying a little spin move on the inside, trying to show off his variety. Got pushed inside pretty good by Daniel Lamara. And now we get Michael Sinelli up against Zach Wilkinson from Northern Colorado. That's an interesting note as well for guys that necessarily aren't always centers, as Michael Sinelli is from Toronto originally, by way of Concordia now, and celebrates with the U of T offensive line coaching staff that's on the field here. But he had a really good session, I thought, especially for a regional guy. But I just want to point out, when you bring people from tackle or guard and you move them into center, on that snap, Zachary Wilkinson, who has a little bit of center experience, that ball rolled back to the feet of what would be the quarterback, right? And that's one of those things where they'll throw people into uncomfortable situations just to be able to see whether or not they can handle it, and that's not a great one necessarily for Wilkinson, but keep an eye out on that as you go back and check out some of these one-on-ones, because there are a lot of people taking reps at different spots.
All right, that wraps the OLDL Indies and one-on-ones. Pretty fiery.
Did you have fun?
I did have fun. A really fiery and exciting morning. I think we've got so much more to come, guys. Make sure you tune back in at 11 a.m. Marsh. That is for the 40, the marquee event, I would say, of the Combine. It's going to be a fast one. 11 a.m. Eastern, guys. We'll see you shortly.